Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name's Amanda and I'm so glad that you could join me today. Today, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the dietary requirements of the three religions that we seem to always be exploring: Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. So we're going to take a look at those three regarding what they say that you can't eat, if they have any rules on food. You ready? Let's dive in. Okay, so we are going to cover all three, and we're going to start with Judaism. Okay, so Judaism has a whole set of laws in the books of Leviticus 11 as well as Deuteronomy 14. And these sets of laws are all around kashrut, or the dietary laws of Judaism. So those are the laws of Judaism. So what are these laws? Let's take a look. Number one, you are not supposed to eat any animal unless it has cloven hooves and chews cud. So cows, sheep, goats, and deer, fine, not a problem at all. Pigs, horses, camels, not permitted. They don't have cloven hooves or split hooves, and they don't chew their cud. That's just what the Torah says, so that's what they do. They also say you cannot eat birds of prey. So you can't eat vultures, you can't eat birds that eat other animals. Crows, not allowed. Chicken, turkey, duck, all good to go. Okay, chickens don't eat other chickens typically, so they are not considered birds of prey. When it comes to aquatic things, their requirement is it has to have scales and fins, and it has to have a backbone. So cod, salmon, tuna, all good, no problems at all. But because it has to have scales, fins, and a backbone, it disallows shellfish. So no crab, no shrimp, no lobster. That's Judaism's rules of kashrut. Now, it goes beyond just what you can and can't eat. Depending on your level of observance, you also will only eat meat that is kosher, or it was slaughtered in a certain fashion. Now, this is going to get a little bit graphic, but we're going to be real on this channel, okay? So the ritual slaughter for Judaism, it has to be, there has to be a blessing said on the animal as it's happening. It has to be a very sharp knife. Can't have any blemishes, nothing. And it has to be slaughtered with one quick motion across the neck. And then all the blood has to be drained from the animal. The animal has to hang. It cannot just be laying on the ground and letting the blood drip out. And then once the blood is out, the people who are doing the slaughtering, so the butchers, will check the entire animal and all the meat for any disease. If there's any disease found, then that animal is not kosher to be eaten by Jewish people. Now, there are different movements and different levels of observances in the Jewish community. So there are some that will abide strictly by the rules, and there are some that will not. There are some that eat bacon cheeseburgers anytime they want. There are some that will not eat meat unless it is kosher. It's their choice. Nobody's here to judge. We're certainly not the people to judge in the Jewish community. They let their Judaism speak for themselves. Okay? It goes another step farther. There is a quote from Exodus 23, verse 19, and it says, "Do not boil a kid in its mother's milk," or that's the frequent interpretation of it. That's taken to mean many different things depending on how you interpret it, because that's really all it says in the Torah with that. You have to go into the other books to figure out What does that actually mean? Now, some will take it to mean that they cannot eat meat and dairy together. Some will take it to mean I can't cook meat and dairy together. And some will take it to mean I can't cook them together, I can't eat them together. In fact, they can't even exist in my stomach or intestines at the same time. So for those people, they would wait between 1 and 6 hours between eating dairy and meat, because it's all about how closely they follow the laws of kashrut and their understanding of that particular verse. Now, again, there's different levels of observances and different movements, and that's completely fine. And there's differences within each movement. In some, they will have what's called a full kosher kitchen. So they won't have any products that are not allowed. They won't have any foods in their home that contains any of the unallowed products. So for example, cows are okay to eat, pigs are not okay to eat. Pigs, the bones make gelatin frequently. Gelatin is found in some marshmallows, in gummy bears, things like that. So if that item it just says gelatin, they won't have it in their house. If it says beef gelatin, then it's okay. But again, it's different levels of observances. So that's some houses. Some houses have 2 ovens because they can't have dairy and meat cooking in the same place. It changes it in their mind, and that's a violation of the "don't boil a kid in its mother's milk" quote, in their opinion. Some people are absolutely fine. So if they have 2 ovens, they also have 2 stoves, they also have 2 refrigerators, they typically have 2 sinks, and they have 2 sets of dishes for cooking and serving everything. Because you cannot put meat and dairy in the same pot, even if you wash them in between. That's different levels of observances. Certainly not everyone does, but some do. And according to Torah, it says, do not boil a kid in its mother's milk. So you interpret that as you choose. Okay? And there are questions as to, well, why are the Jewish people so strict regarding kashrut? And there's different theories. Some believe that they are supposed to have very different dietary rules because it's supposed to make them marked among society as different. And some believe that it's a test of their obedience to Hashem and what he desires. And some believe that it's purely for health reasons because in research, pork in particular has certain bacteria that cannot be killed 100% of the time, regardless of how you cook it. There's different ways to prepare it, but it never completely gets rid of all the bacteria. And the Jewish people find that their bodies, they want to keep as clean as possible because they are vessels given from God, and they want to respect that. So that's the Jewish laws. If you are speaking to someone who is Jewish, typically the first thing when you think of is they can't eat pork. And I don't know if it's just a Wisconsin thing, but many people are fixated on, that means you can't have bacon. Yeah, most Jewish people don't eat bacon, and that's completely fine. There are many other alternatives. I promise nobody goes hungry in the Jewish community, okay? The next one we're going to talk about is Christianity. Now, Christianity has many different thoughts and theories as far as food, but at the same time, their thoughts and theories are very wavering. But the basic rule of thumb is that the rules of the dietary restrictions that are found in the Old Testament and the Jewish people refer to that as the Torah. The Christians say that those rules don't apply to them. It only applies to the Israelites. So basically they're given a pass, because in Mark 7 verse 19, Jesus declared that all foods were clean. Because he came, all foods were now clean. Okay. Furthermore, it says in John 13:35, it says we should be known for our love, not for our meal. Basically saying again that it doesn't matter what you eat, it just matters how you act. Okay. Again, in Romans 14 verses 1 through 23, this time Paul is speaking, and he says, not everyone is mature enough in faith to accept that all foods are clean. So he suggests this. If you're eating with someone who is offended, then you shouldn't eat that. But the people didn't necessarily like that, so they put a modification, and they said you can eat whatever you wish, as long as what you choose to eat doesn't cause someone else to stumble in his or her faith. Okay? So basically, the equivalent would be you wouldn't drink alcohol and tempt someone who is an alcoholic by drinking in front of them, typically. That's basically what they're cautioning them to do or to avoid, okay? Now, there are some different denominations within Christianity that practice slightly different. So, for example, Christians don't have any foods that they can or can't eat, but in the Catholic denomination, they have a practice or a tradition that was started many years ago of during Lent, they eat fish. They don't eat meat. It used to be that they wouldn't eat meat Wednesday through Friday, but then the popes changed it and it's just Friday now. And they do the fish on Fridays, particularly during Lent, to remind them of Good Friday. Good Friday, if you recall, that is when Jesus died. Jesus died for the sins of the world. So that's why they eat fish on Friday. And they eat fish because fish are cold-blooded animals, and Jesus was a warm-blooded animal. So to do the opposite out of respect for him is why they eat fish on Friday. So basically, Christians have no foods that are off limits to them. They can eat, consume, drink whatever they want and as much as they want. However, they do frown upon eating animals that were sacrificed. So if you're sacrificing an animal to an idol in particular, they would refrain from eating that animal. But they also don't typically do animal sacrifices anymore. But that's the one thing that they don't really want to partake in. Okay? So that's Christianity. We have Jews who have quite a lot of dietary restrictions, and we have Christians who don't really have very many restrictions as far as dietary laws. So I wonder where the Islamic community or the Muslim community falls into that whole scheme. Okay, so Islam is actually more stringent with their dietary laws than the Jewish people. They have lumped all foods, into either halal, which means it's allowed, or haram, which means it's banned. You can't eat it. Okay. And that is because the Quran 2 verse 168 says, eat what is good. Eat what is good. They view that all life is sacred, so it's not just about how an animal is killed or how an animal is processed. It's also about how was that animal treated when they were alive. Okay, so it's a big deal. They also say that you should only kill with God's permission. You shouldn't just kill for fun. And you should only kill meat that is lawfully needed for food. So if you're one person, You don't go out and shoot 15 deer. You don't need that much meat. You should just kill what is needed for your food in Islam. They're very interested in health and cleanliness as well as obedience to Allah. So they stay very close to those traditions and those rules. There are a number of rules as far as what they can and can't eat. So let's run through some of them. First off, they can't eat dead meat, which seems a bit confusing. But basically what it means is they can't eat meat that was killed previously. So like roadkill, if you hit a deer with your car and the deer is already dead, you can't pick that deer up, take it, and do your process to make it halal to eat in Islam. That doesn't work. You cannot drink or eat blood. So any animals that you're eating, make sure that all the blood is drained first. Okay, number 3, there is no intoxicating drinks, no alcohol, including, for some, any sauces that contain alcohol. So soy sauce comes from the soybean, which can be fermented to make alcohol, so they will not use soy sauce. For some, again, for some. None of these rules or regulations apply to everyone in every situation. We have free will. Okay, the next rule in Islam regarding food is that the meat of an animal should not come from someone who is electrocuted, strangled, or by blunt force, because studies have shown, based on Islamic studies, that electrocution, strangulation, and blunt force, all of those animals have pain induced on them as they are dying. They're very conscientious of life. Life is sacred. They do not want to cause pain, which I know sounds contradictory because you're going to eat them. However, they have rituals that inflict the least amount of pain possible. For the sake, I'm going to jump ahead just a second. There is, in their studies, in their research, the animal from the time of them walking into the room to the time that they are finished is typically 2 seconds or less. So that amount of time doesn't give them enough time necessarily to feel panic, to feel scared, to be intimidated. That it's just not enough time. So that's why they do not have any animals eaten that were electrocuted, strangled, or killed by blunt force. Okay. They also do not eat the flesh of the swine, so they will not eat pigs. And they will also not eat any meat that was sacrificed. That's just something that they consider haram or banned, not okay. Okay. Now, in opposition to the Jewish people, remember, they can eat only certain aquatic animals. In Islam, they believe all aquatic animals are fine to eat except alligators, crocodiles, and frogs. And I could not find why they were okay, but all the other animals are a halal. That's just the way that they have their interpretations. Their big push, life is sacred. They want to preserve their mind and their sanity, which is why they don't do alcohol. They don't do drugs. They don't partake in things that change their mind or their sanity. So they won't even use cooking wine when they are cooking. Even though the alcohol burns off, they will not use it. That's just part of their culture. Now, so the ritual that I told you about Judaism, it's similar for Islam, but slightly different. So let's go over it again. Okay. So in this ritual, the animal in particular has to be well taken care of for their entire life. Okay. When it is time for that animal to be slaughtered, the people who are doing it will make every effort that there is no suffering. No suffering. They cannot see or hear any other animal being slaughtered while they are waiting. That would be inhumane to, that doesn't make sense. That would not be appropriate in the Islamic mindset regarding treatment of animals. They would not be able, that cow, for example, should not be able to see or hear any other cow or any other animal being slaughtered. Okay. Again, it is used with the slaughter is completed with a razor sharp knife, and it is one swift motion across the neck. They are to transverse or cut the trachea, as well as both blood vessels on the side of their neck. But they are not able to cut the spinal column. So you don't want to cut their head completely off. But by cutting those three, the animal is not able to breathe, and they will bleed out very quickly, typically within 2 to 5 seconds, and the animal will be dead. Okay? And then all the blood is drained again. It's hung, not on the floor, hung. And then it is blessed before, it is blessed after, and that would be a halal meat. Okay? There are certain butchers that are halal. There are certain butchers that are kosher. Typically, all meat that is halal is kosher. Not all meat that is kosher is halal, however. Okay? And there's a law called the law of necessity that supersedes everything in Islam. They have many dietary restrictions. However, if there is no halal food option available to you, your life is more important. Life is sacred. So you are permitted in that situation to eat as much food as you need to survive until you can find halal food. That doesn't mean that you should go and have a cheeseburger with fries and all this other stuff, because that's not needed, but you should eat just enough to sustain you. Okay, so this was a very interesting topic for me to research. I'm actually going to do a couple more where we look at specific traits within the 3 religions and see how they compare and contrast, because I very much enjoyed this learning, and I hope you did too. I hope to see you next time. Bye.